Hi, my name's Pip.
And my name's Claire.
And we're both physios, and we're going to do a Q&A style video to answer the most common questions we get from our patients. This video is going to be on stress incontinence and leaking with exercise. When people talk about leaking during exercise, are they usually talking about just a couple of drops or quite a lot?
So it can vary a lot between women. Sometimes it's just a couple of drops or like a 5-cent piece. Some women find that they don't even need to change their underpants, but they're just aware that they've lost a couple of drops. Some women will find at the other extreme that they actually have to change their outer clothing and that they're losing the whole volume in their bladder, or it feels like they're losing the whole volume in their bladder. So when we say, do you experience leakage during exercise? Not necessarily talking about a kind of pants wetting situation. It might just be a couple of drops. And that is something that we're interested in and that we would try and change.
How common is it to leak with exercise?
It's really, really common. So 1 in 3 women who've had a baby will experience involuntary urine loss or incontinence. And it's certainly one of the most common complaints that we see here. You don't have to have had a traumatic birth. You don't even have to have had a vaginal birth to experience leakage with exercise. So it's really common, and if you turn around to your mother's group or your friendship group, it's very likely that a few of those women will be experiencing leakage during exercise too.
If I'm leaking during exercise, does that mean I have to stop exercising?
So if you're leaking during exercise, it is really important to come and see a women's health physio and get yourself assessed. There are a few different reasons why this might be happening, and not all of them rule out particular types of exercise. But generally, if you're leaking with exercise and you know which type of exercise it is, it's the star jumps or it's the skipping or it's the running or the box jumps or the lifting or whatever it is, then yes, it's a good idea to stop that type of exercise because you might be causing damage, which can then make the problem worse. And that's something that your physio will be able to discuss with you. It doesn't mean you can't exercise at all. We are very pro-exercise in the physio world, particularly for women, because we do tend to stop exercising, particularly around when we have babies and when we go through menopause. And we know the benefits of exercise. So one of the things that your physio is skilled in is figuring out what type of exercise you can safely do and still work towards your larger fitness goals. So if you want to run eventually, if that is your goal, but you can't do it at the moment because you have a prolapse, you have incontinence, then we will still be working on the muscle groups that help you to run, on the postural control, the body awareness, the cardiovascular fitness, without putting pressure on your pelvic floor.
What are the most common sports that you see women leak in?
So I guess running is the big one, often running. And then quite often sort of, and I don't want to disparage these types of groups, but outdoor exercise groups where you're often doing a lot of skipping, star jumps, jumping up and down. Also things like CrossFit where you're doing a lot of heavy lifting that really give a lot of challenge to the pelvic floor. So they're probably the most common ones. But some women with more severe stress incontinence might find that they don't even need to do exercise to get leakage. They might do things like get out of a chair or lift a laundry basket, and that's enough to cause incontinence. So again, that's why it's really important to get checked out if you're leaking at any time with physical activity.
Do you see leaking with exercise in athletes and elite athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. Elite athletes have quite a high incidence of stress incontinence, and that's whether or not they've had a baby. So even young women and teenagers in sports like gymnastics, sometimes ballet, things like hurling and tennis, things where there are high forces going through the body repetitively, where there's a lot of stopping and starting, so things like netball where your whole body weight goes through one leg. It's quite a lot of strain on the pelvic floor, and just because you're young doesn't mean that you're invulnerable to stress incontinence, unfortunately.
If I leak during exercise, does that mean my pelvic floor is too weak?
Not always. I would say almost always, but there are a lot of women who are actually too tight in their pelvic floor, and so when there's increased pressure on the pelvic floor from something like hitting a tennis ball or landing off the balance beam, that the pelvic floor doesn't have anything else to give. It can't create any more closure on the urethra, that tube that takes the urine out of the body. And there can be other factors like the way you hold yourself. So if your rib cage is very stiff or your neck is very stiff, if your tummy muscles are too tight, then all that pressure that's generated inside your thorax and your abdomen can go down onto the pelvic floor. And then so even if your pelvic floor is really strong, when you then increase the pressure again by doing one of those activities, that's when you'll get leakage. So yeah, you don't have to have a weak pelvic floor to have a situation where the pressure inside the bladder is too high for your pelvic floor muscles to cope.
What are my options if I leak during exercise?
Option 1, ignore it and hope it goes away. Probably not very likely, unfortunately. Option 2, seek help. So speak to your GP if you're not comfortable coming directly to a women's health physio. But we are primary care practitioners, so you don't need a referral. Women's health physios who are trained to assess and treat the pelvic floor can be found in directories. So there's the Continence Foundation of Australia. There's the Women's Health Training Associates directory. If you just Google Women's Health Physiotherapist in your local area, you should be able to find someone who can help you.
If it was you and you were running or doing your favourite sport and you started leaking, what would you do?
I would stop, firstly. So I would consider that a sign that my body is telling me this is a bad idea, I can't cope with this exercise, there's too much stress on my pelvic floor and I could do damage if I continue. So number 1, stop doing that exercise, find a way to rein it back. So if you're running, you can keep walking. If you're doing, let's say you're doing box jumps or you're doing wide squats, maybe you do step ups or you narrow your stance. So find a way to modify the exercise that takes away that symptom, that means that you don't leak anymore. And then after that, I would seek help from a women's health physio, because it's one of those places where even physios need help. We can't really assess our own pelvic floor. So that would be the next thing that I would do.
So if I'm a runner and I've had to stop because I leak urine, does that mean I'll never be able to run again?
So this is very unlikely. The women we work with very often get back to running, and there are often lots of factors involved. So we might need to look at your running technique. It might be the way your foot hits the ground, the way your weight comes down on your pelvic floor that's causing you to leak. We might be able to use support devices to help your bladder be more supported when you're running so that you don't leak. We might need to do a program of strengthening and rebalancing the muscles so that you can control the leakage of urine during exercise. So your physio will work with you to progress towards whatever your goals are, whether that's running or tennis or whatever it is. We can very often help you get back to that exercise.
Hopefully you found these videos useful. Please share them so other people will see them. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments below, or you can contact us via Facebook or via our website, which is www.sydneyadvancedphysio.com.au. If you'd like to make an appointment, you can do so via our website, or you can call us on 9416 4410.